Jai Anilo Premadano Karamakacho Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhaktivedanta Canto 3, text number 9, chapter number 9, text number 41. Uratena tapasa yatnaya danaya yoga samadhina Tatvani Matam Murtena Tapasayatnaya Dhanar Yoga Samadhina Radham Nishresam Pumsam Mat Pritis Tatvanin Matan
Utena tapasaryaye yoga samadhina nishreya sampusa matriti sattvavinmatam Utena tapasaryaye
Ladies. Purtena, by traditional good work. Tapasa, by penances. Yajnani, by sacrifices. Dhanani, by charities. Yoga, by mysticism. Samadhina, by trance. Radham, success. Nishreyasam, ultimately beneficial. Pumsam, of the human being. Mat, of me. Priti, satisfaction. Tattvavit, expert transcendentalist. Matam, opinion. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke mind satisfaction. Purport. There are many traditionally pious activities in human society, such as altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, internationalism, charities, sacrifice, sacrifice, penance, and even meditation and trance. And all of them can be fully beneficial only when they lead to the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of any activity, social, political, religious, or philanthropic, is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. This secret of success is known to the devotee of the Lord, as exemplified by Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. As a good, non-violent man, Arjuna did not want to fight with his kinsmen. But when he understood that Krishna wanted to fight and had arranged it at Kurukshetra, he gave up his own satisfaction and fought for the satisfaction of the Lord. That is the right decision for all intelligent men. One's only concern should be to satisfy the Lord by one's activities. If the Lord is satisfied by an action, whatever it may be, then it is successful. Otherwise, it is simply a waste of time. That is the standard of all sacrifice, penance, austerity, mystic trance, and other good and pious work. These words, which we have recited here in this verse, were originally spoken by the Supreme Lord in response to prayers offered by the Creator of the universe, Brahmaji. In the Vedic cosmography, there is a difference between the universal Creator and the Godhead. In other words, in Judeo-Christian thought, God is called the Creator. And in fact, He is still the Creator here in our Vedic thought. But the difference is that He has an agent through whom He creates, and that agent's name is Brahma. So even though Brahma is very powerful, because he can create an entire universe, and we consider an ordinary person in this world to be powerful, that he can create, something huge here, like Bill Gates is very powerful because he's created a huge, industry based on computers and the internet. Very powerful, so powerful that the whole government of the United States of America has to try to limit his power because they feel threatened or others feel threatened. But that's a very minuscule display of strength when we consider the strength of someone like Brahma, who can create a universe. And Bill Gates may claim, that he's created a universe, but that's a metaphor. His universe is limited, to more or less limited to this planet. And he hasn't created the planet. Obviously, there's been a long history of this planet, and it will go on after him. But Brahma is very powerful. He creates planets. He creates the original progenitors, those first persons, just like, again, the Judeo-Christian idea of Adam and Eve, the first progenitors, right? From Adam and Eve, supposedly so many offspring came. Well, in the Puranas, there's no mention of Adam and Eve, but there are mention of very powerful persons who were the first progenitors, and they were born from the mind of Brahma. But this Brahma is simply one representative and empowered being of the Supreme Lord, of Bhagavan, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So, if we think that Brahma is the most powerful person in this universe, we should understand that there are many, many universes. And just like on the news, they said that, they found there was a huge explosion in outer space, and they believed that it was either two stars colliding or one star exploding. And then they said that the light was a huge light, and it took 9 billion years to reach the Earth in order to see that explosion, which I thought was really mind-boggling. Here we were watching this explosion that took place 9 billion years ago. Talk about a delayed reaction. 9 billion years. So, it's a huge expanse of time, huge explosions. Stars are, we're talking about, this is one universe, and there are millions of universes, and each universe has a Brahma, a person who creates it. God, the original Godhead, doesn't bother with universal creation personally. Doesn't bother means, Bill Gates is an ordinary human being. He has to go to work. If he leaves that work, then gradually his empire will collapse. But that's because he doesn't have capable persons like Brahma. Krishna, on the other hand, we see playing his flute. And this is an indication of playfulness and enjoyment. God does not have to bother with universal creation. He has better things to do. He's permanently on vacation. He plays his flute, and you can see in these paintings in this temple room the various types of enjoyable activities he engages in the rural setting of Vrindavan, Brajabhumi. So this is the conception that the Bhagavatam gives us of the Godhead, that he is not some old ancient figure with a long beard sitting on the throne worried about the world. He's a transcendent being who enjoys. And because each one of us is a part and parcel of God, we also have a tendency to enjoy. So each of us is an enjoyer. But the difficulty is that the means for enjoyment is not yet given to us. And this is the whole purpose of this Krishna consciousness process, to regain the means to become again, or to regain our original right to be an enjoyer. At the present moment, we are trying to express our desire to enjoy through a very imperfect vehicle, namely this body. When you consider what this body is made of, you will understand that it can't be a very good vehicle for enjoyment. When we speak of vehicles now, our minds think of cars, right? We think, somebody has a Toyota, somebody has a Mercedes, somebody has a Ford, and they give us relative service, transporting us around. But no one would think of getting into a vehicle like this, what this body is, when you consider what the body is, right? A bag of skin stuffed with bones and pus and mucus and stool and urine. Imagine if a car was made of these things. They wouldn't have many sales. Very low sales. Maybe a pig would think that it's a fit vehicle. But no human being would get into such an automobile. And yet we have entered into this type of vehicle. And that's why we're constantly miserable. Because we're trying to enjoy through a vehicle that is made of very detestable substances. And if you think about it, you will recognize all of our enjoying attempts are done through this body. Now, someone may have more subtle intelligence and think, well, I won't try to enjoy through this body. I will enjoy through a more subtle body, the mind, right, which is not made of stool and blood and mucus and pus and urine, etc. And that is a sign of intelligence, to try to withdraw through the mind. But the problem is that the mind, after all, is like a film on which are imprinted all of our experiences done through the body. In other words, what is the mind actually imprinted by? Thoughts of how the body tried to enjoy. So really we have not escaped the same problem. It's just through a subtle means. The mind, rather than the gross physical body. So that sort of mental enjoyment, mental gymnastics, and climbing around the gym of the mind and exercising, still doesn't bring us away from the problem of something which is very different than what can bring us pleasure. Now, when we speak of being part and parcels of God, this means that God is spiritual. He's a spirit. And similarly, we are also spiritual, or spirit soul. We have the same nature as God. So if we want to enjoy, it has to be done through our spiritual nature, the soul. And this process of Krishna consciousness is meant to teach us how to become happy on the spiritual platform. And that is the subject of today's text. It is a text spoken directly by the Godhead Krishna to Brahma. And Brahma was in the process of having to create the universe. And he was worried, because anybody who has to do such a big job would be worried. His fear was that I'm going to become entangled in this type of engagement. I'm going to lose sight of, what the life is really meant for, and just become absorbed in the work and all the problems of the work, become attached to the results of my creation. That's intelligent. An intelligent person should understand ultimately what the goal of life is, and Brahma knows what the goal of life is. So, here's what the translation says. And it's very interesting. God says, it is the opinion of expert transcendentalists. Very interesting. Why doesn't he just say it's my opinion? Doesn't say that. He says expert transcendentalists. That means persons who have achieved the goal of life. He's saying, don't just take it on my word, because right now he's a disembodied voice. When he speaks these words, Brahma cannot see him. So if you started hearing voices from the sky, you might not also believe them. So he says, it is the opinion of expert transcendentalists. Don't just take it on my word, even though my word means more than anyone else's. But it's confirmed by great personalities. And if you think for a moment, you realize that this is one of the big problems that we face today. That there are no expert transcendentalists to appeal to. Just like now, we see that our country is at war, right? I mean, I know that many of you may not know that, because as transcendentalists, you try to not think about what is going on outside of the spiritual activities of Krishna. But we are at war, just in case you go out at the same time. You have to talk to someone. I'll just give you an update on the news. The NATO is bombing, Yugoslavia. And anyone who sees the news would have to wonder what the purpose of the bombing is. You'd have to wonder about many things if you watch the news today. And the reason you have to wonder is that the leaders of the world are not clearly following any ideal plan for achieving the goal of human life. That's very clear. If you ask the leader of NATO, or the leader of Yugoslavia, or the leader of practically any country of the world, what is the goal of human life? Very rarely could you get a clear answer. And even if you did, it would be clear that the way they lead the country is not to achieve that goal. So the first thing is, the first question one must ask oneself is, what is the purpose of life? If you don't know what the goal of life is, there's no way you'll know if your activities are in line with that goal. Are they going to help you to achieve that goal? So an expert transcendentalist is one who knows the goal of life and leads his or her life accordingly. And therefore it is stated that if you don't know what the goal of life is, you should approach someone who does know. You see that in Bhagavad Gita, Tat Mani Pradipatena, Pariprashnena Sevaya, Upadekshena Jnana, Jnanivas Tattva Darshana. Well, yes. In the Tattva, just like this word, Tattva Bhini Madam, the expert transcendental opinion. Tattva Darshana, one who sees the truth, one who knows the truth. You should approach such a person. Traditionally, that person is called a guru. A guru is a teacher. And inquire how, not challengingly, but submissively, being ready to do some service. We approach the Srimad Bhagavatam in that mood. We approach the Murti of Srila Prabhupada in mood. We approach learned devotees in that mood. Submissive, humble, ready to do service. And we inquire, what is the goal of life? Now, in this verse it says that the ultimate goal of all types of activities, and then it lists some of these activities. What is the ultimate goal? To invoke the satisfaction of the Lord. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada offers us a very nice example of Arjuna, a famous soldier. Right? Any one of you who knows the Bhagavad Gita has heard of Arjuna. Arjuna was faced with a very unpalatable task. He had to fight in a war against his own family members, his teachers, and honored and revered persons. It was a war he did not want to fight. And in fact, he begged to be excused from fighting. But ultimately, when he listened to Krishna's words spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, he agreed to fight. He began to recognize, to remember, that the goal of life is to please Krishna. What comes to my mind just at this moment, it happens many times. I think every devotee faces many such moments, but one very clear instance, when Prabhupada told me to go to preach Krishna Consciousness in the Orient, And at first, because I had a large service to perform here in America, with so many different people depending upon me, at first I said, well, how can I do it? Can't possibly do it. I have this to do and that to do, and this person depends on me. The problem, like a person playing on a chessboard, he just swept the board clear of all the pieces. And said, then I take it all away from you. You don't have any of those things anymore. And when the board was clear, Prabhupada was sitting on the other side of the board. And I realized that, I looked and I smiled because I realized that the whole purpose of my having offered that service to Prabhupada here in America was to please him as the representative of God. He was my guru, and it was to please him that I was doing that service. And if now he was pleased by my going to the Orient, that was the purpose of my life. It didn't make any difference whether I was working here in America or if I had to go up to the Orient. When Arjuna understood that he is eternally the servant of Krishna, then whatever Krishna asked him to do was equally satisfying to him. It didn't matter what it was. This is the position of knowledge and detachment. When we say Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayochita, Jnanayati Yasa Vairagyam Jnanam Charya Hoitukam, that knowledge and detachment automatically follow when one performs devotional service to Vasudeva, Krishna. This is the meaning. You get knowledge and detachment. In other words, I immediately became detached from all that was holding me here in America. When I was given this knowledge by Prabhupada, this realization that the purpose is to please Krishna, not to do this or do that. So numbers of activities are mentioned here. For example, performing good works. Traditional good works. Now, what are those? Tapasya, penance. People do penance. Whatever your penance may be, I think there are so many penances and sacrifices. Next, yajna. I was sitting with one gentleman, and I was a professor, chief editor of this Encyclopedia of Hinduism that's coming out. He said he was sitting in one program, and one sannyasi was giving a lecture about sacrifice. And the sannyasi surprised everyone and said that the greatest sacrifice, the greatest person who does sacrifice in the Vedic tradition is the woman when she gets married. Because she gives up everything that's dear to her. Or in the Vedic culture, once a woman is married, she leaves the home of her parents who have raised her, who she loved so much. She leaves the home that she knew, the parents she knew, and gives herself entirely to her husband and the family that she will live with. So he said the sannyasi was glorifying the sacrifice made in such a situation. The sacrifice, that just came to my mind. It's a nice sacrifice. Some of the ladies to do here. We make sacrifice. Family people make sacrifice for each other. Husbands, wives, they sacrifice for their children. Brahmacharya does penance and sacrifice. Keeping practically nothing, living on very little, and simply going out to serve the order of Guru, preaching Krishna Consciousness. It's a great sacrifice, penance, giving in charity. We try to do some, and people do give in charities. There are so many different charities that you can give to. Mystical meditation, but all of these things are listed for one purpose, to say that the ultimate goal is to invoke the satisfaction of the Lord. And if that is not done, you have not succeeded in your charity, in your penance, in your sacrifice. So now each one of us sitting here must examine our lives. The purpose of reading a scripture is not for just mere entertainment. The purpose of reading a scripture is to get purified. When you sit face to face with scripture, it is a bold and daring move, because you're going to be challenged. If you take it properly, you're going to be challenged. Your life gets challenged. It gets put on the line every time you open the scripture. Because here's a statement which you have to now use to examine your life. Are the works that you are doing satisfying to the Lord? That's the question you have to ask. And if they're not, then, as Prabhupada concludes, otherwise it is simply a waste of time. That is the standard This is a standard that you have to apply. So, one may feel that this is a bit too strict a standard to follow, that everything I do has to be done for Krishna. I mean, this is, what comes to my mind at this moment is sometimes when I would, in the early days when I began to distribute books, and I would have to confront many Christians, and they would, say, why do you have to take up this religion? What's wrong with our own religion? And I would always, answer that there may be nothing wrong with it, but I find very few people who practice it strictly. And then they say, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, just like, let's take cigarette smoking. How can you justify smoking a cigarette in the name of, serving God? How do you offer cigarette smoking to God? And just like we heard this morning, Hari Prabhu's diary, Prabhupada was talking about one young man. One young man wrote to Prabhupada starting an organization, and Srila Prabhupada, I'd like you to be founder or acharya of that organization, founder or acharya since this boy founded it. Prabhupada said, I don't mind accepting an honorary post, providing that the members of your organization agree that there will be no taking of intoxication of any kind, including tea, coffee, and cigarettes, no gambling, including bingo. That's what Prabhupada wrote. No gambling, including bingo. No illicit sex, which he said means no sex outside of marriage, and only sex within marriage for the purpose of procreating children. And no eating of meat, fish, or eggs. He said, then if you agree that all the members of your organization will follow these rules, then I agree to be the honorary head of your society. Which is, I thought, a very good way. The whole society was for Christ consciousness. And Prabhupada was not disturbed by that at all. He was quite prepared to be the head of the Society for Christ Consciousness. But they had to follow what he understood to be the principles which are God conscious. Prabhupada said, we separate humans from animals. Otherwise, he said, I want nothing to do with it. So I would answer to these Christians who I met that you can't justify smoking cigarettes. When someone tells that joke, the Pope was asked, is it okay to smoke cigarettes while praying? And the Pope said no, and then they said, is it okay to pray while smoking cigarettes? And the Pope said yes. But I don't think Prabhupada would have answered exactly yes. I mean, perhaps he would have, in the sense that Prabhupada was asked, when Prabhupada said that when a person goes into a bar, if they drink liquor, they can say, the original taste of water is Krishna. It may be in that mood. In other words, somehow remember Krishna. But obviously, Prabhupada's position would have been, don't smoke cigarettes, period. Because until you give up illicit activities, impure activities, there's no question of making advancement in spiritual life. Sooner or later, you have to say no to, gambling, meat eating, intoxication, and illicit sex, if you want to be serious about achieving the goal of life. So, then you tighten the screw. Once you have come to that point, you have to tighten it further and see that not only do you give up, not only do you prohibit the wrong activities, but the right activities have to be done for the pleasure of God, for Krishna's pleasure. How do you know that Krishna is pleased? Because that's the next problem, because you can justify. You know how expert we are justifying everything we do. If you want to know how your mind plays tricks, you just remember that every day you look in the mirror and don't think that it looks so bad what you're looking at. Nobody here would be voted as a beauty queen or the king of all good looks. And yet there's not a single one of us that doesn't look in the mirror and somehow find what they see fairly pleasing. Only very few people just decide not to look in the mirror at all. Some devotees do that, right? They don't keep any mirror in their house. But we fool ourselves daily. And so it is very easy to imagine that we will also fool ourselves about the point of what is pleasing to Krishna. Oh, I'm sure Krishna is pleased by my activities. Just to make sure, you might want to ask a few other people. And they shouldn't just be your husband and kids, or someone who is tied into your own game. Ask other detached, non-aligned people what their opinion is about your good works, your penances, your sacrifices, your charity, your mystic activities, if you do any of those. Let them say it. And that's the purpose of this Sangha. Right? Again, that's another daring move. If it's daring to open up the scripture, it's equally daring to agree to live in the association with devotees. Because this is more or less a large family, and family members do have the right to speak to each other in an intimate way. They can give their opinion, right? Just like children don't hesitate to say to their parents what's on their mind, right? If the parents do something different than what the parents have told the children to do, the children really pipe up immediately. Why are you doing this? You told me you weren't supposed to do this, but now you're doing it. Right? The children say that? Yeah, some of them say more than others. You said that I shouldn't do this, but now you're doing it. So, we have to be prepared for the fact we should be open. And actually, parents are generally open. They like that. They appreciate it. When their children catch them, then they recognize and they have to admit, yes, you're right, and I will do differently. Otherwise, they can't say it anymore. So devotees should be able to explain to each other if there is need of improvement. But unfortunately, we have very hard shells. We build a big defense system around ourselves so that no one can get too close. Right? If someone comes and tries to ask you for service, what the speaker correct you, immediately the guns come out, heavy ammunition comes out. You give them, they know that this is they're stepping on very, difficult ground. So we should be not like that. We should be very open to being approached. Rather, we should ask for criticism. Please help me. Please show me my faults. Bhaktivedanta Swami, the guru of Prabhupada, used to say that anyone who praises me is not my friend. But anyone who points out my faults, that person is my friend. I don't think any of us believes that it would be very hard for any of us to say that genuinely. But Prabhupada, after repeating that, Prabhupada tells how the nicest remembrance he has, the best experience, most outstanding experience, is when he was chastised by his guru. That's the outstanding, one of the most outstanding moments Prabhupada recalls, when his guru corrected him. But generally we want praise. And with that type of praise, it is very hard, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada says, very hard to make advancement if you're always wanting praise, or if you want to be left alone. We have to come to the point where every breath is devoted to Krishna. You need to have a lot of help to come to that point. You need to do a lot of work to come to that point. That every breath, why every breath, every thought is Krishna's conscious. Otherwise, at the final moment of death, something else will come to mind. We saw one girl leaving her body, lady in Vrindavan, and what was she asking for? I think she was asking for tomato. Wanted to eat a tomato. I don't know if they gave her a tomato or if she saw through the tomato. You probably read the book. I forget. But in any case, she probably got over that. But just to show you how the mind retains desires, and these desires come back when you come close to death. They surround you. And if you haven't gotten free from them, they engulf you and suffocate you, and you're not able to remember Krishna. You can have so many people trying to help you remember Krishna, but, they'll be faced by all of your desires. You can't fake this process. You can't, fake your way into the spiritual world, back to Godhead. It's impossible. Very diligently, you have to uproot material desires, whatever they may be. And here is the method: to one by one start to use each and every one of your activities for Krishna's satisfaction. So I take that this microphone is telling me to shut up. I'll stop my lecture here and ask if there are any questions. Rosie, thank you.
You were saying that Lord is, I hear the Lord saying expert friends then say the opinion of the expert friends and experts. When Arjuna makes the same comment in Bhagavad Gita in the 6th universal form, it's not only my opinion, but it's also the opinion of Narada, Sita, and
yeah, yes, Rosie, that is reiterating the point. In other words, the point is that when you make any statement, you should appeal to authority. The Prabhupada says that if you go and you tell your next door neighbor, you are a fool, supposing that you do that, he could, if a child goes, if a child says to the neighbor, you're a fool, that the neighbor could become angry, that then the child will say, I didn't say that, my father said that. So, in the same way, Mudha, Narada, Maya, Pritikani, Ashuram, Bhavanashita, 4 kinds of persons don't engage in Krishna's service, and Krishna calls them fools, lowest of mankind, speculators, and demons. And if we call someone, you're a demon, now people could get angry with us. But it's not our opinion, it's what Scripture states. The appeal to authority is the basis of our knowledge. It's not that this is the work, we don't take it that this is the speculative efforts of some ordinary human being. One of the first things that's done in the Bhagavatam is to establish the credentials of the speaker. This is one of the first things you have to do. Who is it that's speaking? And that's typical, right? When you see an advertisement for a lecture, they always state what the person's credentials are. Well, what is Vyasadev's credentials? Right away you get it. By the 3rd chapter, the whole first canto, he's describing how he met Narada Muni, his guru, who corrected him. And we also find out he's an incarnation of God. And he is the source of this literature. And Sukadeva Goswami, who speaks, we also find out who he is. Narada Muni, we find out his credentials. That's the first canto. One of the things it does is it establishes the authority of the Bhagavatam by establishing, who these people are. They're not just ordinary Tom, Dick, and Harrys. So even a great person, like Arjuna, or the greatest person of all, the Godhead himself, they still confirm that even if you have some doubt in his voice because you can't see me, Krishna says, go and ask expert transcendentalists. They'll confirm what I'm saying. By their own experience, they'll tell you. This is not some dry, speculative attempt, right? One of the things that makes a lecture convincing is that a devotee speaks from experience. I remember lectures given when I first joined Moon by Jayananda, the temple president of San Francisco. And Jayananda, he was the temple president and he was a taxi driver. And his lectures basically consisted of telling you about whoever he picked up previous days in his taxi and how much they were suffering and how they told me about this and this. And he would just, deconstruct, life, material life through the conversations he had with the people in his taxi. That's how he gave the lecture. They told me to give the lecture. Second day I moved to the temple. I said, okay, it's your turn. And then that was my turn. There were 1, 2 people. But anyway, they said, we've all, your turn. So I said, what am I going to speak about? They said, speak from your experience. Since you don't know the scriptures, just speak from your experience. So, of course, the lecture is not just based on experience, but it is confirmed by experience. And a devotee's conviction is based on experience. Otherwise, he has no strength to convince another person. Actions speak louder than words. So this is I think this is a very interesting verse, because what it states is it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is whether it's pleasing to God. Whether is it pleasing to Krishna? It doesn't matter what you do, but does it please Krishna? Everybody here keeps thinking it matters what I do. It matters if it's pleasing to Krishna. What you have to find out is Krishna pleased? And you don't find out just by your own thoughts. You ask other expert opinions. Another question or comment?
Sir?
Yes.
You said no material desires, but how does one satisfy the basic needs of food and shelter and clothing if you do not work for some kind of material thing? I mean, you can't just be a baby.
Good question. The question I'll repeat is that since we spoke about getting free from material desires, what about the basic necessities? Food, clothing, shelter. We can't do without these. You're correct. We cannot do without them. So each one of them has to be connected to God. In other words, when you eat food, you should first of all offer it to God as a sacrifice. For example, did they make the offering? Did they make it during the lecture? You might have noticed while I was speaking that they put a curtain up here, a small curtain. Well, they were offering food to Krishna. That same food which we will later on eat was first offered to Krishna. So here's an example of what you must do to purify the desire regarding food. Whatever food you eat, first of all, offer to Krishna at home or wherever. Right? Similarly, with your home. Your home should become like a temple. Now, I don't mean to say that there can't be any beds there, no toilets there, or anything, but I mean to say that the purpose of your home should be for serving God. That means you can consider the pictures that decorate your walls. Are they helping you to remember Krishna? Whatever it may be, that home is a home for you and your family to be secure, to be nourished and protected. But the purpose of your lives should be service to God. Then that home is like a temple. There should be, in the morning, you should get up in the morning and bathe and then do some spiritual activity. Chanting Hare Krishna, maybe reading Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, having kirtan, chanting with your family members, inviting friends over to tell them about Krishna. And you can start to make your home more Krishna conscious. We can go on with that. The clothing we wear can have some spiritual meaning to it. Why we wear these saris and dhotis, at least in the temple, if possible, at other places. But I recall when I first joined this movement, any clothing we got, we would offer it first on the altar. Everything. Every piece of clothing we got. Before we put it on, we make it as an offering to Krishna, just to purify it. So, I hope that gives you some idea. Your work, you're going to earn money at work. Some amount of that money should be used for Krishna consciousness. Right? You can donate something, whether it's for a program like Food for Life, Hare Krishna Food for Life, giving people prasadam who are needy, or perhaps maybe donating a new set of clothes to the deities, or helping to improve the temple property, or paying for some books, Krishna conscious books, to donate to the libraries. Some amount of your money can be utilized that you earn for helping to spread Krishna consciousness. That purifies your work. So the idea is that you connect each of your activities. Not that you stop eating, not that you don't have a home or no family, but these add Krishna. Not that you subtract something from your life, but add Krishna to each of the parts of your life. Then you won't have, it won't be material desire any longer. That home in which Krishna is the center is not a place of material desire. Just like our bodies, I said our bodies are made of stool, urine, bones, and pus. But if you use that nasty combination, somehow if you would use it in the service of God, even this body gets purified. So desire right now is for our own pleasure. We have to purify that desire and make it for Krishna's pleasure. We just have to change who we're working for. Instead of just I, me, and mine, we have to start to become Krishna conscious. Do it for Krishna. That clear?
Yes.
Another question? Comment?
To the Gurudev, when we're trying to do nice service, sometimes there's two avenues that seem equally appropriate. And we might get different conflicting views from devotees about what is the best thing to do. And then the mind seems to take over and can't make a decision.
Well, if you have two conflicting views about what to do and you get conflicting opinions from devotees, then you have to count the votes. If 75% of the devotees say something and 25% say something different, then go with 75%. But also see who they are. They should, you have to also be able to judge the qualification of who's giving opinions. Not every devotee is equally advanced. And ultimately you can appeal to your guru if it's such an important question. Of course, if it's not a very important question, you might not want to bother. But if it's a very important question, you can appeal. You can also look at scripture. You're not just, you're not a dullard. One can open up the books and get the answers oneself to some extent. But for practical matters, ask devotees. And when in doubt, do without. Maybe it's better not to do anything until you get the answer. If it's such a puzzle to you, then wait some time until Krishna makes it clear. If something is so confusing that you can't figure out what to do, then don't do it. Wait, and gradually it'll become clear. All right, I'm going to stop here. I thank you for your careful listening, and may you all become Krishna conscious. I hope these words have helped. Hare Krishna.
Gurudev ki
Srila Prabhupada ki, Lord Bhaktivedanta ki, Lord Premanandi.
Next one.